Hey everyone, it is beautiful out today, but I hear that there is a storm coming in. And a couple of things that I know is one, I have a policy against killing my students, as I have mentioned before. And I also know that a lot of you live in places where the roads may not be that great, even if campus is open. And so we're going to have a light class, even if campus is open Tuesday morning. And I also know that if campus is closed on Tuesday morning, we really can't afford to miss another class because then we'd have to move in and use a makeup day. And I am available to do that. We'll do it if absolutely necessary, but if it is not absolutely necessary, I would like to avoid it. I don't like to ask my students to do that if there's any other way. So we're going to be moving class online for this week, no matter whether class is, whether campus is open or not, class is going to be online. So that is going to be done. Now this week's class is actually a lot of videos that we were going to be talking about throughout class, and we're not going to be able to do that exactly. So what I'm going to do instead is give you kind of an overview of the content, which this will be a pretty short video. And I will link on our Blackboard page for this week all of the different videos, and I will tell you when, in this video you should go and check those out, and what each of those are about. I'll give a kind of brief overview and a few things, key things that I want you to be paying attention to in each of those videos. And finally, I am going to go over an activity that I do want you all to do on your own time. And so to get full credit for participation for this week, I want you to watch this video, watch the other YouTube videos. You'll learn a lot. They're good videos. And also at some point this week, go and do this activity and go to the discussion board to talk about this activity. I will have a discussion board open for it. I will have a link for it within our week's folder for this week. And if you have typed something into the discussion board about doing this activity, then that is full credit. That is full credit for participation for this week. And that's all. I'm going to switch over now to a kind of presenter view, I guess, and hopefully we can get all of this to work.
Okay, so first we have Persuasion, our chapter on persuasion. Full disclosure, a persuasion lecture is actually the reason why I changed my major into psychology. I had been a foreign languages major, and then in a psychology seminar that I was in, I saw this persuasion lecture, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to take that class. So I signed up for that professor's Psych 100 class, and then took their persuasion class, and basically by the end of that I decided to change my major. So I find this an awful lot of fun, mostly because this is one of those things where you realize how these mental shortcuts, these heuristics that we use in order to make sense of the world, in order to help us make quick decisions about what we should do just generally in life, they can do us a great disservice. In addition to being highly useful, our brain is remarkable at figuring out patterns and basically not wasting our time with trying to figure out every little thing, but instead just going along with something that is generally true. And I think that it is hilarious to think about all of the times that I have been taken in by something, even knowing all of these things and having known all of these things. Now, this video that we have first. It's the Robert Cialdini Persuasion video. It's also with Steve Martin, the psychologist, not the comedian, but it's an animated lecture that goes over the major terminology within this chapter. So I'm not really going to go too much detail into that with this slide, because I do think that these experts in the field they discuss it way better than I ever could. Also, just FYI, if you are interested in this topic, Robert Cialdini has a really great book called Persuasion. There are several editions out, so surely you can find one for pretty cheap. It is a great read, and it will really give you insight into your own brain and also other people's brains. So within this video, but also within this chapter, we are learning about different heuristics that our brains use in order to, again, make quick judgments rather than trying to figure everything out from baseline zero. And these things do typically work well for us. And as you are seeing in this video with Cialdini and Martin, they aren't unethical or bad in and of themselves. Like even when you are, quote, using them against other people, you can use them against other people in ways that are just kind of beneficial for everyone. They're win-win. And it's really good for us to know that. They can also be used kind of, I guess, with questionable ethics or even completely unethically. We do see a lot of these things used in sales and in marketing, that they are actively trying to manipulate the way that our brains are thinking about different products or different activities or different things that we might want to spend our money on. And so that is absolutely a case there. However, they're also just kind of used in our general how we get along with other people. We do enjoy receiving things from other people, and also when we receive a gift from them, we feel a little bit beholden to do something nice back in return. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. That is one of those things that enables us to maintain the social order. I included too a second video. This is the How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a synopsis overview video. The book is by Dale Carnegie from 1937, I believe. And it really does look at using these tools of persuasion specifically to get along better with other people. And again, not for any evil, manipulative, or anything like that sort of way, but just this is how we get by, and these are some good tips and tricks and strategies for getting along well with others. So please, yes, stop and watch these videos and come back to the lecture after that. So next we have conformity, compliance, and obedience. These things are considered similarly, although they are very specifically different psychological principles. And so I want you to make sure you are clear in the difference between these three pieces of terminology. So conformity is when we choose, this can be a conscious or an unconscious choice, to go along with a normal behavior in a group setting. When you walk into a room and everybody is being quiet and then you are quiet as well, that's probably some exercise in conformity. If you walk into a room and you are having a conversation with somebody else and you notice that everybody else is dead silent and so you and your friend both fall silent as well, that's definitely conformity because you're choosing to go along with what is happening in the room. So again, conformity can get a bad rap because we think of, oh, we're not being our individual true selves, or we're just going along with the group, or peer pressure, or things like that. And yeah, that can absolutely be a part of it. And also, conformity is part of our getting along with other people and making society comfortable for ourselves and for other people. And I don't think that that's an inherently bad thing. In fact, if everybody was constantly being only individualistic and never attending to what was going on in the context around them, I think society would fall apart pretty quickly because we wouldn't have any of these group norms or rules for our behaviors. Now, compliance is when we agree. Somebody asks us to do something and we agree to do it. It is agreeing to do something based on a request. So we have a choice not to, but we choose to do it. Whereas obedience is doing this behavior because somebody has commanded us to do it, specifically someone who has some level of authority. This can be real authority, our boss or our teacher or a parent if we're kids, or I guess still adults, or it could be like a perceived authority. So someone who has a degree in a field and they ask you to do something or they tell you to do something, or someone walks in and uses a commanding presence, or someone on TV is dressed up like a doctor and they say you should try this medication, and they have this sense of authority with them, and so you're more likely to kind of agree with them, or to, follow that command. Now, this can be hijacked, as we're going to show in a couple of videos later, such that even when there is not any real authority by someone, it can ping into that piece of our brain that says someone has given me a command, I recognize some level of authority from this person, and will go along and do it anyway. And, that can be a problem at times. Also, I guess you should recognize your own authority in situations. If you need someone to do something for you, you can tell them to do it. It may or may not work, but we all have this capacity for this authority. It's also important to recognize that the line between conformity, compliance, and obedience is not necessarily a very clear line. So if I ask you, will you please write down a paragraph about this thing, and you can do it or you cannot do it, that would be a request, and if you comply, then that would be compliance. However, if I say, will you please write down this paragraph about XYZ, or else I'm going to give you a failing grade in this class, it is phrased as a request, would you please do this, but that's a command because I do have authority over this grade, and so I am exerting my power over that. Also, sometimes conformity can follow there having been requests previously. Think about especially when you're a kid and you are still learning how to follow social rules, and so teachers tell you to be quiet, people tell you to be polite, your parents tell you to share, things like that. You've been commanded over and over until you learn the rules, then you are requested over and over until you learn the rules, and at some point you may just decide that you want to go along with these rules on your own, at which point you are conforming rather than complying or being obedient. So why do we go along? When there is a request or when something is going on within a situation, why do we conform to comply with or obey, kind of like what's going on around us? Well, there's a few different things. Humans are social animals. We've talked about this a lot of times. We are wired to kind of check out the situation, see what's going on, and fit into the situation. This, again, in and of itself, I would say is a good thing, or at least not an inherently bad thing. But we can fall victim to something called the bystander effect. This is when we see someone needs some sort of help, but if there are a lot of people around, we are more likely to do nothing unless other people are doing something. We kind of fit into this inaction or this non-action, even though if we were just on our own and someone needed the help and we were the only one there to help them, we would jump into action. So we actually see the likelihood of someone stepping up to help decreases as the number of people around us increases. Now you might be thinking, well, actually if people are watching me, then I am more likely to do a thing, but that's the thing. If you are within a group of people, nobody's watching you. Everyone is watching everyone, and therefore no one person is particularly called out to be in charge of the situation or to be the one who responds in the situation. The bystander effect is amplified, or I would say more likely to happen, if there's ambiguity in the situation. If you're not entirely sure what is happening or why it's happening or what would be the right response, we are much more likely to use social referencing that we've talked about before last week in social psychology and also within developmental psychology. We look and see what other people are doing, and we kind of fall into that. And if everybody is looking around to see what other people are doing to figure out what is the right response, that means nobody is actually doing. And so everybody is looking around and seeing nobody is doing anything, and so they become less likely to step up and do anything. We also experience this sense of de-individuation. This is, we are all individual people, but when we are within a group, and we don't have any specific role that I'm the one who should stand up and act in this situation, we don't feel like an individual person. We just feel like someone who is there, and we think someone should do something, but we don't necessarily feel that responsibility falling on our own shoulders. Now, this is important to know as we are moving through our lives from a couple of different perspectives. So, one is that when we are in a situation where we're in a public place and we need help, so say you have fallen down and hurt yourself, you're in the middle of the mall or a store, and people are like kind of looking at you like, should I intervene? Is this something that, does this person need help, or are they just acting weird? Is this person drunk? Like maybe, they're feeling a little cautious about you because they don't know what's going on with you. It is totally okay, and I would say, keeping in mind the bystander effect, what you absolutely should do is point to one person and say, you help me, or you call 911. You can think of this like if you've received first aid training before, and they say if someone goes into cardiac arrest, you start doing this, but you point to someone and say, you call 911, because otherwise folks are just going to have the bystander effect, or may have the bystander effect of everyone looking around, oh my god, what should I do, and nobody's doing anything, so nobody does anything. So call someone out specifically. Also, with the bystander effect, it's important to know that if nobody is acting, that's probably because nobody is acting, and we can break this by ourselves acting. So if there is an uncomfortable situation, nobody seems to know what to do, and you're starting to think, I think somebody should do something, you stepping forward and doing something, or stepping up and saying something, makes it much more likely that other people will then step up and help you, because then they will be following your cues about what to do in the situation. Now, we can see some examples of this with Asch's experiment on conformity. This is a classic study, and this video that you're going to see is just, it's perfect, it's classic. It is such a simple design. So basically the participants are told that they have to compare these two lines and pick which line matches, but then at some point everyone else in the room starts giving wrong answers, and so the participant has to decide, not knowing that this is what the study is all about, do I go along with the group and give the wrong answer, or do I single myself out by giving the right answer? So pause here and watch this video because it is absolutely classic. Alright, so I'm assuming that you have paused and have watched this video, and I want to point out that one of the things that we see is, number one, there's a lot of different reasons why people go along. So there's the one guy who's like, I don't want to make waves, because he felt that there was some sort of social sanctioning against him by speaking up and saying the wrong thing, or by speaking up and saying the right thing. And so when he gives the wrong answer, like, you can hear it in his voice. He's like, oh man, these people are stupid, and I'm gonna say it because I don't want everybody to look at me. And that's the thing, the social sanctioning that he received is people glanced at him. It wasn't like, people pointed and yelled at him and said that he was stupid, or stop rocking the boat, or, get the hell out of here, or anything like that. Just a side glance was enough to make him uncomfortable, that he would deny his own experience, his own knowledge, and give a wrong answer. And then we see this other guy who legitimately was thinking, all of these other people have to be seeing something that I'm not seeing. Like, they can't all be wrong. That would be ridiculous. And again, similar to the bystander effect, you see that when there is somebody else who is going along, when there's some sort of partner or confederate, we're much more likely to step up and say the right thing or do the right thing. So again, you can be that person who steps up and says the right thing or does the right thing. Now, I did also include a couple of videos, candid camera, and one for YouTube, which is where they basically use these conformity experiments in candid camera to see if people would go along doing something that is just totally weird. It's hilarious. Watch that video. And the YouTubing, this guy is doing this for YouTube views and money and whatever else, but he goes out into public and he does a weird, awkward thing that you wouldn't do in public, and then you get to watch how do other people respond to this. Some people stand there awkwardly, like, what the heck are you doing? Some people immediately dive in and start, dancing around with him. There's this whole range of responses that he gets, and that's kind of what we would anticipate when we breach the social contract. So when we go against those norms, those social and cultural norms that we have in our society. Now moving on, we have our context minimization error. So we talked a little while ago about the fundamental attribution error. This is when we see this snapshot, somebody behave a certain way, and we just make a decision on who they are rather than what they did in the context of that happening, I guess. So someone makes a behavior, it's not a good behavior, and we think, oh, that must be a bad person, rather than there must be a reason for that bad behavior. So this is both the fundamental attribution error, which would be saying that is a bad person, attributing it to the fundamentals of who that person is, and minimizing the context around why did they make this decision. So this, it's like the flip side of these two issues. It's really important for us to recognize context minimization error and the impacts that it can have, because it can lead us to basically not notice or not care for, not attend to the limits or the encouragements that people may have towards certain actions. So doing the right thing in some situations is really easy, and if we've only ever been in easy situations to do the right thing, or we see other people who are in easy situations doing the right thing, we think, wow, what a wonderful person, but it's not superhuman for them to do the right thing in that context. However, there are other contexts where doing the right thing is really hard and really scary, and if we're not seeing that, we may just be thinking to ourselves, well, why didn't they do the right thing? Well, there's reasons, because it was hard and scary. It can be a lot more of a difficult thing. It's not always just a simple yes or no. Similarly, choosing to be successful or to try, it can be something that you basically just walk into with a modest amount of hard work, or it can be someone is just busting their butt day in and day out for their entire lives and still never reach those markers of success. And it doesn't have to do with who they are as people, but the contexts in which they are in. We can also not see how the decisions that we make, that we get to make or that we have to make, can be influenced by the context that we're in. So again, doing the right thing, sometimes we know immediately what the right thing is, and sometimes we have no idea what is the right thing. And sometimes we can be in situations that are growing incrementally worse and worse, and just slowly shifting our sense of what is right versus wrong. Similarly, being successful, that can just seem like an impossible dream. Why would I even bother trying for it? And just making these decisions, kind of like the learned helplessness that we talked about before. I'm not going to put my time and energy towards something that's never going to happen. And we might want to look at that person and say that person is a slacker, but no, that person is assessing legitimately the time and energy that would have to go into XYZ outcome, and just basically decides that it's not worth it. Now this last three videos that I want you to watch, the first is the Milgram experiment, and this is talked about in your chapter, I believe, and it's one of the classic experiments that really does go into why do people go along with something that would go against their ethics or go against their morals. Now, this is a confined experiment, so I mean, like, it happened over, a period of minutes and hours. This wasn't a period of days or weeks or months, and yet people would incrementally become okay with harming another person because they had someone in authority commanding them, you must do this, you have to do this. When you watch this video, I want you to pay especial attention to how calm the researcher's voice is when they say it is essential that you must continue. They're not looming over them, they're not using physicality or threat or anything like that. They just have a sheen of authority on them and they are stating a command. I also want you to notice that the guy in this video says, who's going to take responsibility if this guy is harmed? And the researcher says, I'll take responsibility. And so the guy who is actually performing the action basically washes his hands of a sense of responsibility for his actions by thinking he's basically de-individuated himself. He has placed all of the responsibility for what he is doing onto the hands of the person making the decision, which is no longer him. He has decided, okay, I am just handing this away, and then he becomes a tool rather than the person who is actually acting and making these decisions. The Zimbardo, the Stanford Prison Experiment, this is a trailer for a movie. I've never seen the movie, but I have seen Zimbardo speak a couple of times about this experiment. And one of the things that he talks about is that when he was in this situation, when all of them were in this situation, they were completely secluded from the outside world and the outside reality. And over this period of a week, they basically went from being a group of random college students who were randomly assigned into, conditions, either being a prisoner or being a warden, or sorry, being a guard, or they were just people, regular people, but as they adopted these roles and as they were away from the rest of the world and they didn't have that outside context to kind of help them loop back into, okay, what are social norms, over a period of days, and by the time that they called the experiment off, there was active harm being done, like active abuse, that the guards, who again were just regular people but put in these positions of power, were enacting against the prisoners. And the prisoners had adopted the role of the prisoner and accepting the abuse and, not fighting back, and, some of them going on hunger strike because that was the way that they would fight back rather than actively standing up for themselves like they may have done 2 weeks previously if somebody had treated like them just out in the regular world. Zimbardo also talks about how he himself was manipulated within this experiment. He kind of adopted the role of the warden, like he's watching all of these things happening, and because he too is excluded from the rest of the world, he is getting really into, well, now these guys are doing this to these other guys, and isn't this interesting? And he's no longer thinking of them as humans, as people. They're just like research subjects, and he's fascinated watching it go down. Every person basically within this experiment, it was so poorly crafted. It is considered a failed experiment on many different levels, but also, kind of fascinating for how quickly we can see just regular people falling into positions where they would be willing to harm others. Now, the last video that I have, I wanted to kind of end on a high note. So this is the defying authority. This is going back to the Milgram experiment. And you have two people in this video who both say, no, I don't have to do this. And I would say that the only difference between these folks and the folks who went along with providing the shocks in the Milgram experiment all the way to the end was that there was something within them that said, I don't have to obey. You don't actually have authority over me. I do actually have a choice in this situation. And I think that it's really important for us to recognize this, because we do always have a choice in a situation. Sometimes it's a bad choice. If I told you that in order to pass my class you had to do something that was just absolutely against your ethics and morals, you would have a choice. You could do it, defy your ethics and your morals and pass my class. You could stand up to me and say, no, I'm not going to do this, and maybe fail my class. So defying your ethics versus failing the class, those are two just both crappy choices. you could go above my head to the dean and be like, file a complaint or whatever else. That's an administrative process. It can be, scary and unsettling, and people don't want to stand up and do all of that. So that could be another choice. And in that situation, none of them are just good, happy choices where you're going to walk away feeling great and super confident of what the outcome is going to be. But they are all choices. And so it's important for us to recognize when we get into this situation of, oh my God, I have to do this because I have no choice, that we need to stop ourselves and remind ourselves this is our brain telling us that we don't have a choice, but we do actually have a choice, and then looking to recognize what that is.
Okay, and so now that you have watched this video as well as all of the other videos linked to in the lecture for this week, and you've read the chapters and everything else, the activity that I want you to do is to go out and perform a breaching experiment. So you'll remember from the candid camera and from the YouTube video earlier that breaching experiments are any time we breach the rules, our social contract that we have. We have this kind of agreement of these are the ways that you behave in society. And when you don't behave that way, or when someone doesn't behave that way, people notice, and they may think it's funny, or they may think it's odd, they may think it's threatening, or scary, or something like that. I want you to go do one of those funny or odd things. So my rules are, don't do anything dangerous or illegal, don't put yourself at risk, please don't ever do that for this class. But what I do want you to do is to go out and do something that is unusual, that people would not expect in a certain situation. You can do this in your home. If there are other people in your home, you can just start speaking Pig Latin to them and then see what they do. Dress very oddly. We got a snowstorm, go out in your swimsuit, walk around on the street, or not in the street, but where passersby can see you. Go to a restaurant and sing your order to the waitstaff rather than speaking it like you normally would. Just do something that is unusual, that would stand out. And then make a comment in the discussion board that I have linked in this folder about, what did you do, first of all? How did you feel while you were doing it? Were you embarrassed or excited, or, I don't know, anything specifically? So what was the experience that you had personally doing it? And then also, did other people notice? And if they noticed, how did they respond? Did they pretend like they don't see you because they want to be super polite and not call attention to the weirdo over there? Or did they just like openly stare? Did they laugh? Did they join in? So tell me what happened. Tell us all what happened. These are really fun, and again, do something fun and weird because that always just makes it better. And that's our class for this week. I will see you guys, weather permitting, next week, and we will close up the semester with our final lecture and then prep for our exam. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's the end of the semester, but I will see you guys soon.